also this whole subject of the past it's so obviously confusing. Because when you look at, I watched your video today, the Baalbek video, just looking at the enormous size of those stones, there's no reasonable explanation how people, like, what is that dated to? Like, what year do they believe it was made?
This is where it gets fun, is because they credit it to the Romans and the Phoenicians. However, it goes beyond the sophistication and the capabilities what the Romans were known to have, whether it's the existence of the screwjack for lifting the stones. But Baalbek, which is located in Lebanon, and I had the great privilege of going there in September of last year, exactly 1 month before things kicked off in Israel with the whole Hamas thing. And if I hadn't got there then, I wouldn't have no chance. Like right now, Israel's bombing Lebanon, and so it's a dangerous place. But Baalbek, if there was one example, one ancient site on Earth that is evidence of a lost, ancient, advanced civilization, and by advanced, I'm not talking about space lasers here. I'm talking about more sophisticated than what we were taught in school for the known capabilities. And Baalbek has the largest stones that were ever quarried in human history, the largest stones that were lifted, stacked, and transported in human history, and the largest stone columns in all of classical history. And we're talking, so the trilithon stones, 3 stones, 900 tons apiece, or 800 metric tons, and they were moved a half a mile from the quarry. They were lifted and stacked approximately 30 feet off the ground. And when I say stacked, they were perfectly lined up. And Jamie, it's in my folder of Baalbek if you want to show some of these. And they're absolutely massive. So let me tell you right here, and I, of course, have the gentleman there who I'll tell you about later highlighted just to kind of show you for perspective. Like that's someone right there, it's 5'11". Those stones that are highlighted in red are the trilithon stones. But these pictures do not do it justice because it's taken through an ultra-wide camera lens. From the top to bottom of the red highlighted stones is 14 feet, and they're 62 feet long, or 62 feet, excuse me. Like, there's me. And
that's so crazy. It's hard to tell because of the perspective, and people need to kind of understand how a wide-angle lens sort of distorts things by showing you this enormous field of view. But when you're looking at something that's 14 feet long and 62 feet long and 14 feet high, like what is the weight of that? What's the overall weight?
900 imperial tons or 800 metric tons. And to anyone listening, a metric ton is 2,200 pounds, 1,000 kilograms, and an imperial ton is 2,000 pounds. So that's 1.7 million pounds, each of them, and there's 3 of them. And if you were to go to the quarry, there's ones that are 1,200 tons and even 1,500 tons that are 20 feet tall. This is mind-boggling. Like, Jamie, if you want to just scroll through some of the other photos to kind of give Joe the perspective and the audience the perspective.
And these are clearly cut stones that were moved into place and moved 23 feet above the ground.
Right. And technically 30 feet because there's stones that are actually below the ground there that you can't see because it's submerged under the earth. So technically it was 30 feet, but 23 feet off the ground today. And right there, this highlights, so not only is that 14 feet from top to bottom, which you would never realize when you're looking at this, and these are confirmed measurements, by the way. This is right out of encyclopedias. But notice how they're completely flush, nice and even with each other. And this exceeds the known capabilities of what the Romans had. And it's worth mentioning that this site is some 2,400 miles from Rome, the capital. And if they're going to say that this was created by the Romans, one, people need to understand that the Romans were renowned for documenting everything, yet this site is not credited to anybody. They don't know exactly who did it or when, but the academics conclude that it had to have been the Romans or the Phoenicians because, of course, there was no one before them. And with this photo right here, let me say something else. There is evidence of at least 2, but arguably 3 different architectures that were done at this site. And I would conclude that this is evidence that this site existed in prehistoric times. There's also, I can show you encyclopedias that talk about Baalbek being prehistoric in nature, dating back 11,000 years of human history. And what I argue is that it was built up, it was found by the Romans and the Phoenicians and built upon later. And right here is evidence for all that have eyes to see. Look how they obviously use broken stones and constructed on top of it. Why would you go from making the most advanced stones in history that far exceed anything you see in Rome? For example, if you were to go to the Colosseum, as magnificent as that is, it is architecture of mathematics and just brilliance. But this right here, why would they use why would they, for all the feats of Roman history, why would they have the most impressive feats over 2,000 miles away from the capital? In fact, let me just say this. When I'm talking about 900-ton stones, the largest stone in all of Rome is 53 tons. It's the Trajan's capital block that make up the Trajan's column. 53 tons. This is 15 times heavier.
There's a number of things, too. Now, I'm not a huge believer in ancient technology.
Oh, sorry. No worries.
I'm not a big believer in ancient technology, as Jimmy's well aware. But
which is why it's important that you're here, because people are going to hear multiple perspectives.
Yeah, that's where I can tell you some things about Baalbek that are still interesting to me. One of them is you don't see the Roman foot in those stones, which is weird. You would expect to see some sort of breakdown of the Roman foot in these measurements, but they're not there at Baalbek. They are there on the stones that were quarried from
By
the ground.
Roman foot, what you're saying is that there's a different measurement, what they considered a foot. It's
Yes.
not 12 inches.
Correct. There's a Roman unit of measurement that they would use in construction, and we don't see it in those stones in the trilithon. But there's 3 stones that were quarried and left in the ground. All of those stones show signs of using the Roman foot.
Yeah, Jamie, will you scroll over to this?
So that right off the bat shows to me that the ones that were installed were not built by the Romans, but the ones that were quarried were made by the Romans. They were trying to quarry out stones to match it.
Right here.
Another thing is
That's crazy.
Roman architecture always uses the most impressive things right in the front. You walk in the front of the thing, and that's where you're going to see the biggest stones, the most impressive, for obvious reasons. These are in the back, completely on the opposite end of the entrance. So you have to, like, from what you told me, you kind of have to look for them if you don't know where they're at, right? Like, you can't just show up on the site and they say, here's the trilithon.
Well, let me tell you a quick story real quick. So I had the pleasure of going there with some people, and I'll tell you about it later. I won't do the name drop just yet. But Dory, who lives in Lebanon, he toured us around, and he had been to the site 3 times before. When we went, it was his 4th time. He did not know of the existence of the trilithon stones. They're around back. You got to walk probably a third of a mile to get there. They don't even bring the tours around to the trilithon stones. He had no idea what I was talking about the night before at dinner. I'm trying to explain to him, like, the trilithon stones, the 900-ton stones. And I had to show him a picture. He had never seen them before.
How do they not show the tourists this?
That's an excellent question. Now, you do have to
seems-
walk. To be honest, it's like a 12, 15-minute walk to go around to get there. I mean, it's part of the platform, but you have to go all the way around. And some people just don't feel like making the walk. And when we were there, we were totally alone for a half hour with these stones. Not a single person. There was hundreds of people at the site. Not a single one of them came around back. Now, just to clarify what the audience is seeing right now, this is at the quarry, which is a half mile away. This is where all the stones originate from. And this one right here is what's called the Stone of the Pregnant Woman. It is 1,200 tons. As you can see, it's 14 feet tall, which is the same height. So when those trilithon stones I was showing you a moment ago, the only difference is that this one's 68 feet long. It's virtually the same size, except for just a few feet shorter, but it's the same height. So that gentleman right there, Pierre, who's a wonderful man, is 6 foot tall. And look at him just dwarfed by this stone.
1,200 tons.
Insane.
Right.
And it's not from there.
Well, no, it is. This was so this is at the quarry.
So so this one's at the quarry, but the ones that were placed, where are they from?
This quarry, which is a half mile away. So this is
So they
yes,
moved 1,800,000 pounds a half a mile.
3 of them.